Since we're going to be starting with the 0, to me that means we're going to take our clipper and we're going to make sure that the lever is all the way closed. So we would call this a 0 with the lever fully closed. Right? And then I'm going to make my first guideline, and I'm trying to keep the fade low. I'm only going to bring the line up to about right above the ear, and then we're going to go lower in the back. Here's a little gem for you. If somebody asks for a drop fade, that usually means that they want to keep some bulk here on the back so that the back of their head doesn't look flat. So when you do a drop fade, you usually want to, as the barber, want to bring the line a little bit lower, even lower than usual in the back, so that there's some length here to make it so that their head doesn't look flat. That make sense? All right. Let me show you what that looks like. So we're gonna start with our 0. And I like to make a soft line with my 0 so it's easier to take out later. The way that I do that is I'm gonna take my clipper, and as I'm starting to get close to that point where I'm wanting to stop the line, I'm actually gonna start angling the clipper out like this. So when I'm making my line initially, my clipper is almost flat on the scalp. But as I get closer to where I want to stop the line, I start to angle it out like this so I can do more of this flicking motion, and that creates a softer line, which is going to be easier to remove later. The other way that barbers do this is they grab their trimmers and they make a hard line, which makes it a little bit easier to keep the line low, but it makes it way more difficult to take it out later. So we're just going to try to keep this fade as low as possible. So I'm just taking this 0 just above the ear. And because we're looking for a drop fade here, if it was just a normal fade, I would probably bring the line up to here, but I'm gonna dip it down a little bit lower so we can keep more bulk back here. Down a little bit. You can always raise the fade higher. If you're not sure, if the client's not sure whether they want low, medium, high, just start low. You can always raise it higher. All right, so now I'm just using my mirror to double check that the guide, this is what's called a guide right now, this first step that I'm doing, is even on both sides. Because I don't want to do a low fade on one side and a high fade on the other. So using your mirror as a tool to make sure the guides are even on both sides helps prevent that. Also in the following steps, when you're making those next few guidelines, you still want to use your mirror to make sure that those guidelines are evenly spaced. Otherwise you'll end up with an uneven fade. All right, so now I'm going to use the mirror. This is another way you can check. I learned this from my wife. You can use your fingers to make sure the guides are even on both sides. They look pretty close to me. Maybe a little bit higher on this side. So this is probably the most difficult part of the haircut because we're trying to make the transition from this to this. So the way we do that is we're going to try to give ourselves, actually it's counterintuitive, but we want to leave ourselves at least a finger's width of room to get from this to this. And so what we're going to do to give ourselves room is we're going to go in with our clipper and we're going to start with the lever all the way open, and we're going to make our next guide. I'm going to go up about a finger's width all the way around, and that should give us plenty of room to get from this 0 to the next step, which I would call a half. And because I'm trying to be really careful now of creating soft guidelines, I want to be making sure that my clipper is angled out like this so that we can make a soft guideline, which will be easier to erase later. So we're going to go in with the clipper all the way open and create our next guide. Going up about a finger's width is all you need. If you're new to cutting hair, you may need to give yourself more room. As you get more experienced, you can start to get maybe smaller guidelines, but definitely want to give yourself at least an inch to make this transition. Again, we're trying to be mindful that we're using the same width guide on both sides, so that way we can make sure the fade is even on both sides. So this is again the part where you can use your mirror to make sure that your guidelines are even. Uneven guideline means uneven fade. So here's a little gem. I'm not gonna create any more lines now until I erased my first guideline, because otherwise I could get lost inside the haircut and I could and it ends up stretching the haircut out because you're using the wrong guard or the wrong size on the wrong part of the head. So just to keep it neat, I'm gonna start erasing this line, and I'm not gonna move on to the next step until this line is completely gone. The way we're gonna do that is I'm gonna take my clipper and I'm gonna go halfway closed, and I'm gonna start working my way down by fading down until this line goes away. This is a part of the haircut where you have to listen to the clipper more than seeing what it's doing, because it's not cutting much off. But if you listen, you can actually hear what the clipper is cutting. And if you don't hear it cutting anything, that means you're wasting your time, right? But I hear it cutting a little bit. So that line at the bottom should start to get lighter and lighter with each step until it's gone. I like to always move the client's ear out of the way when I'm working around their ears, because I feel like it makes it more comfortable for them and also helps stretch the skin a little bit. But the main reason is just so I'm not banging my clipper on their ear when I'm trying to erase a line. It's just more of a comfort thing that I think hopefully some clients appreciate. So what I'm gonna do now is go one more notch closed. So it's not all the way closed, it's one step above. And I'm gonna start working on erasing this line. But we're gonna try to be careful not to go too high, because if we cut into what we just did, then it's gonna end up raising the fade higher by creating a new line. Yeah. So let's just work on this very bottom area, and you can even start using just the corners of the clipper if you're scared about going too high. And that line at the bottom should start to get really, really hard to see. All right, do you mind looking down a little bit? Here's a gem for you. If you're a client getting your haircut and the barber is doing something on the back of your head, whether it's fading or lining you up, you want to look down a little bit just to stretch the skin, because it does make it a little bit easier to blend those lines out when that skin is a little bit tight. You don't want to look down too much, especially when the barber is lining up your neckline, because if you're trying to get a square neckline, for example, and you look down too far, then it could end up like an arch, because the second you look up, then it's gonna be curved. So there is leaning down too much, but you wanna make sure that you look down a little bit to make your barber job easier, but you don't wanna be putting your chin to your chest, because you could end up with a crooked neckline. That's a gem for clients.
No,
right. Yeah, you don't have a neckline, but for those people that do, that's something they should be mindful of. I learned that the hard way. It's like, the way to fix that is to get now we're tapering it. You're gonna taper your neckline now. All right, so still working with the clipper, just one notch above closed. And that line is coming out really nicely. And that's all because of what we did in the very beginning, just trying to make soft lines. Soft lines make easy fades. If I would have did this line, a hard line with a trimmer, could probably still get it out, but it's gonna take me longer. All right, so we're moving on to what I would consider the second most difficult part of the haircut, which is getting from what I would call a half to probably like a 1.5 or 2. So the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna grab our number 1 guard, which looks like this. We're gonna put it on there and open it up all the way. Then we're gonna create our next guide. It doesn't have to be as big as what we were doing in our past steps, but we still do need enough room to get from this half to the 1 open, all right? So this is what that looks like. And again, we're still trying to remember our clipper fundamentals here by angling the clipper out. You wanna start flush, but as you get close to where you want it to end the line, you wanna make sure you either do this C motion or you angle the clipper out. You can do it this way, or you can do it this way. Either way, the idea is make a soft line so that it's easier to take out later. It does help that I've cut his hair before, so when you've cut a client's hair before, usually the next time you cut it, it becomes way easier to fade. So that's one of the benefits of going to the same barber or the same barber shop where everybody's kind of trained in the same way, is that your haircut's a little bit more consistent and a little bit sometimes quicker, because the barber's just kind of retracing their past steps instead of creating something new from scratch. All right, so here's another little gem. Sometimes when I'm working with thick hair, I like to go over it again. So I already did this step with the one open. But what I'm doing right now is just basically going over it again. And if you pay attention, you can actually still listen and hear that it's still cutting hair. So even though I already went over this spot and this clipper is probably running at 9,000 strokes per minute, it's still catching hair that I missed the first time. So it's always a good idea when you're working with a client that has thick hair to maybe do a few passes, because I have thick hair, and I know whenever I get a haircut and somebody doesn't go over it again, after it might look good I'm in the shower, but the second I step out, I can see all the hairs that were missed by the clipper. So never a bad idea to go over it again. So now we're gonna go and try to erase this line right here, which is what was made with the clipper lever all the way open. We're gonna start that process by using the one still, but we're gonna go with the lever all the way or halfway open like this. So we're using a number 1 guard, lever halfway open. We're gonna stay underneath this line we just made and just start working our way down until this line gets lighter and lighter. And I do these same steps pretty much in every haircut, which really helps me. I'm not like trying something new on every haircut. I do every haircut pretty much exactly the same. And I use the same tools. I'm not always buying new tools and new things, because it's almost like you have to relearn how to cut hair whenever you get a new tool. So if you use the same system for most of the haircuts you do and you use the same tools, then your haircuts will come out the same, which is what clients want. A good haircut every time. I think a lot of barbers don't put enough value in the consistency of a haircut. It's one thing to be able to give your client a good haircut once, but when they come back in a few weeks, are you going to be able to do the same thing again? And if you can, then you become more valuable as a barber than somebody who can just do it every now and then. So one of the ways that we do that here is we try to keep notes on clients. That's one thing we do as a barbershop, to try to keep our haircuts consistent. No matter which barber you sit in their chair, you should get the same haircut. And the one way I try to be more consistent as a barber is, like I mentioned earlier, I use the same tools, same technique. And if you do that, your haircuts will be a lot more consistent. So now I'm working with the number 1 guard, but it's all the way closed. And we're working on that line there at the bottom. This isn't gonna erase this line. What I'm gonna have to do is go to my half guard, and that'll probably get rid of any line that's left over after doing this step. The idea though is that we're just kind of creating the foundation above it, so that when we finally do erase that line, it just kind of blends into what we did above it, as opposed to just moving the line higher. All right, so that's looking pretty decent. There's still a little bit of a line there, and that's what's gonna come out in the next step. So for this step here, and then I think everything else is down here from here, I'm gonna take this half guard or 1/16 guard, and it's gonna go right on the clipper like this. I'm gonna start with the lever halfway open, and this is where we're gonna just do a little bit of detail work to try to erase that final line that's left there. And we'll start with the lever halfway open, and then we're just listening here to see what it's cutting. If it's not cutting anything, we go 1 notch closed. And this is definitely a step where you wanna use the corners more than the whole blade. If you end up going too high with the clipper and the full blade is being used, then you actually end up making a new line. So this is why a lot of barbers will, instead of using the full blade when they're doing detail work, then they're gonna go in with the corners like this. That way, if you end up going too high, it's not a big deal. A lot easier to fix that than if you use the full clipper. You mind looking down a little bit, please? Thank you. Thank you for not wearing a hat before your haircut, because that does make it a lot harder to cut somebody's hair.
Well, I think my glasses, don't my glasses?
There is a little bit of a line there from your glasses, but it's not as bad as, with a hat, it's like in the middle of your head, And so it's generally not a good idea to wear a hat before you get your haircut, because it makes the barber's job a little bit harder, because it's like, Is that a line that I need to erase with the clippers, or is that just a line from your hat? You know, one of the ways we can kind of figure that out though is by giving somebody a shampoo after, because that will kind of get the hair back to normal. But in general, if you want the best haircut, it's usually not a good idea to wear a hat prior to your haircut. All right, so I'm pretty happy with what we did there. We can maybe do some more fine tuning later. We can go in there with the clippers like this, you know, just hit that now with the lever open, just the corners. But you know, we'll check that stuff at the end. Right now, we still got a big obvious line that we want to get rid of here, and I'm going to use number 2 to start getting rid of that. The hard part's over though. You still want to keep this rocking motion, still want to keep your guidelines symmetrical, but this part of the haircut should go a lot quicker because there's going to be less detail work involved. Getting from the 2 to the 3 and tying it into the top. It's going to create a line here because you usually need a 1.5 guard to get from a 1 to a 2 guard, but piece of cake. One of the things that a lot of barbers forget to ask during the consultation is whether or not the client wants to leave a ledge here. Some barbers just assume that we're just gonna shave it off, and I've seen a lot of clients upset about that. So he already told me, but it's just one thing that you wanna keep in mind as a client or as a barber. Just take that little extra step. For anybody that's getting a comb over like this, just ask, do they wanna leave a ledge here? If so, then you want to make sure you leave enough room so you can blend it in so that the hair can basically lay down. Some clients don't care for a ledge. It's totally a personal preference. But as a barber, what gets you in trouble is when you assume. So just ask an extra question, do you want to leave a ledge or not? If they do, then you know how you need to set up the haircut in order to leave that hair long. Now you told me earlier, but this one thing, if the barber doesn't ask, always make sure that you have them leave that hair as long as possible so that it can lay down when you're getting a comb over.
What if the client doesn't know what a ledge is?
Well, that's a good point, because if your client doesn't know whether they want to leave a ledge or not, then the safest thing to do is to leave one, because if they don't want it, then you just take it off, right? But if they're not sure, then you go with the option that leaves more hair. Leave a ledge there. If they don't like it, then you just take the clippers and shave it off. And that's generally a good rule of thumb for most haircut related things. If you're not sure whether you wanna, like we maybe could have did a half and I could have showed you, like maybe you would have been happy with that, right? But if you're not sure if you want a 2 or a 3 on the side, you could go with a 3. And if that ends up being the perfect length, then great. But if I would have started with a 2 and that was like, oh no, that's too short, well then it's too late. You know, now I can't do anything about it. The hair's gone. This is what gets a lot of barbers in trouble when they don't ask enough questions, basically, because I find that when most clients are unhappy with their haircuts, especially at our shop, it's very rarely like a skill thing. It's more so that there was a miscommunication with the barber. Like for example, a lot of clients are uninformed when it comes to what the haircut's called, and that's okay because you guys didn't go to hair school. You shouldn't have to remember the name of every haircut. But sometimes the barber won't take the time to ask an extra question, like instead of skin, do you want to see a little bit of hair there? And the client just asks for a skin fade, and they just go ahead and do it, but then it turns out to be way shorter than what the client wanted, right? So you can ask, you know, do you want stubble set of skin? Do you want to be completely bald? Like ask clarifying questions so that way you can be sure, right? And I'd rather do it again than get it wrong. So this is a 1.5 guard, and this is what we're going to use to start to erase this line here. The 1.5 guard is definitely one of the flimsiest guards along with the half guard, so you definitely want to be careful to make sure that your finger stays on there the whole time so it doesn't pop off. And also the teeth are very not secure, so you want to make sure you're not pushing down too hard because you could end up pushing those teeth apart and cutting a lot shorter than you wanted to. Generally, I consider this a blending guard for that reason. I don't usually use this to remove bulk. I'll either use the 1 open or the 2 closed because of the fact that it's so flimsy. I just don't want to put a hole in somebody's haircut. So just be careful when using this guard and the half guard. They do make better guards though than this. Like this is kind of the default one that comes with wall clippers. So you can buy like higher quality 1.5 guards, like the wall premium guards or the magnetic guards that come with some of the nicer clippers now. But if you're using like just the standard wall 1.5 guard that comes with the clippers, then you definitely want to be careful to make sure that you're not doing any damage when you're using it. Yeah, we're just tying in the 1 now with the 2, and then we're going to do some clipper over comb work to tie it in with the top. And then he doesn't want anything off the top, so we're just going to line it up, make sure he's happy with it, and then it should be good to go. I'm going to go with the 1. I'm just going with the 1 open now. Just to get any dark spots, maybe I'll go halfway closed. Just doing detail work now. I would normally save this for the end, but since he's not cutting the top, I mean, this is pretty much the end of the haircut. Before I go ahead into clipper over comb, I'm going to do the 3, and that should tie in nicely with the top. We'll use clipper over comb to do that final blending. The reason I like to use clipper over comb to tie it into the top is because I don't want to go into the roundness of his head, which would be fine if he was doing like a buzz cut. But since he's doing a comb over and he probably wants to keep as much length here as possible, I don't want to go in and take off all that hair. So I'm going to use clipper over comb to blend it, but not by going into his hairline. All right, so now I'm going to use clipper over comb. This comb only works well with thick hair because the teeth are so fine. So it's good for his hair. So I'm using a white comb. He has got black hair. So we're just going to put that in there. I'm using my finger underneath for support, and we're just going to cut whatever sticks out. Clipper over comb is more of a debulking technique, in my opinion. So it's okay if it doesn't look perfect after doing clipper over comb. We'll follow it up with the guard to catch any hair that we missed and really smooth out the blend. So I'm just going to take my 4 now, and this will probably be the last guard that I use. And this is just going to catch any hairs that the clipper over comb might have missed. Clean you off real quick. All right, so now I'm just going to line up this area here. The same thing on the other side. And then catch any hairs that I might have left behind with the clippers earlier.
Oh no! Like when you go down and it's pop up.
So basically, to line up this arch area, what I've learned how to do to make it super easy on myself is first I'll make a line right here, and then I'll start here, and then I'll just connect the 2. So it makes it a lot easier because we're just connecting the dots pretty much at that point. So this is what that looks like. You first make my first line here. You can think of this as a guide. I'll make my second guide here, which he doesn't have much of a sideburn. That's what I would do. And then use the corner of the trimmer to just kind of outline his hairline, keep it natural, and then make sure I'm going towards that first line I created. Yeah. All right, beautiful.